Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks so much for coming out this afternoon and braving the cold. I'm Emily Bauer. I'm a licensing manager for the Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation. We're so excited about this topic, and we're happy to see such a great crowd here. The Entrepreneurons series is presented by WARF in partnership with D2P, the Campus Entrepreneurship Office. And I want to give special thanks to Laura Heisler, WARF's Director of Programming, and also Andy Richards, the Director of D2P, for all their work to bring together these topics and these speakers. The next Entrepreneurons event is scheduled for April 23rd, where we'll be introducing WARF's new Chief Venture Officer, Mike Parch. He joined WARF back in November and moved his family here from California last week. And we used to make lots of weather jokes, and now we just apologize. In addition, we have a mini series coming up on university technology commercialization through our WARF Essential Topics series, beginning on April 2nd. So if you're on our email list, you'll receive an announcement about that one as well. If you're not on the list and would like to be, you can sign up out there, or you can also sign up on the WARF webpage at warf.org. I also want to give a shout out to a couple of resources we have on campus here in the food space. The Food Research Institute offers a number of services focused particularly on food safety, and they organize a regular event called the Fresh Seminar Series, where they bring in a series of guest speakers. And this is a 1-hour talk that's held on campus, but it's also a webinar, so anybody can access that and watch the talk. And their events are listed on their site at fri.wisc.edu. And the next one is coming up next Tuesday, the 12th, and they'll be talking about aquaponics. The Center for Dairy Research is a fantastic resource for the dairy industry in developing and testing new products. CDR also holds a number of short courses on various dairy-related topics, and they're thinking of holding a short course on food entrepreneurship. So if you're interested in learning more, feel free to look up their website, cdr.wisc.edu, or connect with Vic Grassman, who heads that effort. And I think Vic is here somewhere, right? Vic, can you raise? There he is. Yeah, Vic over there on the side. So a couple logistics to cover before I turn things over to our moderator. Following the panel portion of the session, we'll have an opportunity for you to ask questions. So when we get to the Q&A, if you have a question, just raise your hand, and one of our mic runners will come find you. We do record these sessions, so we really want to capture the questions on the mic. And you can find the recording of this session on warf.org in about a week or so, as well as recordings of all the previous sessions too. So when we wrap up around 5:30, we'll adjourn to the south atrium out the back way there for refreshments and networking. So please stick around and join us. So now for tonight's session, I am thrilled to introduce Alice Choi as our moderator. Alice is a well-known food blogger who launched her own blog, Hip Foodie Mom. She has a strong social media following and is a regular contributor on the national stage, including segments on the Today Show and Good Morning America and numerous publications. And now she can add Entrepreneurons to her list. Alice, we're so glad to have you here. Please help me welcome Alice Choi.
Thank you. I love that my face has been like kind of plastered everywhere and all over the emails. How are we doing today, guys? You guys excited? I am so excited to be here today to be moderating this wonderful event. I've already been introduced, but just to touch on a little bit more of what I do. I run a food blog. I work with food brands and food companies to develop recipes. Locally, I also collaborate with a lot of local chefs. So I work with chefs and restaurants, and we produce video content for social media. So I'm a big supporter of what's going on here locally in Madison on the food scene, within restaurants, special dinners, basically anything that's related to food. I'm there and I'm excited about it. And I'm just so excited to see all of the wonderful things that have been going on in Madison with regards to the food entrepreneurship ecosystem. And what I mean by that, I mean the food carts. So many new food carts, new products, new brands, incubators like Feed Kitchen, pop-up dinners, companies like Eat Street. And it's just been truly amazing to see all the innovation from entrepreneurs in recent years here in Madison. And I am so excited to have the panelists come up and join me on stage. Do you guys want to come up now? And as they sit down, we're going to have them introduce themselves. So, Chad Anderson, Erica Gruen, and Matt Howard. Chad, do you want to kick us off?
Hi, I'm Chad Anderson. I'm the co-founder of Nutri Company, and we are a company in the world to actually take all of the natural sugars out of fruit juice.
Can you guys hear him okay? Okay, maybe speak more directly into the microphone.
I'll try that again. Chad Anderson.
There we go.
Nutri Fruit Company. I'm one of the co-owners of Nutri with Luke Hobson. We build a plant over in Traverse City, Michigan, but I live over in Green Bay. We're the very first company in the world to actually take all the natural sugars out of fruit juice.
Good afternoon, and thanks for everybody for being here. My name is Erica Gruen, and as it says on the screen, I'm the former CEO of Food Network. I'm also an alumna of the University of Wisconsin, and I work as an advisor to the School of Business here. I also mentor food companies, ed tech companies, a variety of kinds of tech companies in New York City and outside of New York. I also consult to media and entertainment companies on branding strategies, business development strategies, and teach entrepreneurship at NYU.
Really hard to follow you up. I'm Matt Howard. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Eat Street. Eat Street is an online ordering marketplace where you can order food from local restaurants. So we connect you with your favorite local restaurants for pickup and delivery orders. I started this company while I was a junior here at the University of Wisconsin. I'm happy to say since the day I've graduated college, this is all I've ever done. So we were able to expand the company to 250 cities across the country, over 15,000 restaurants. We've raised about $40 million in venture capital. So part of my main responsibilities are working with our investors, our board of directors, to oversee the strategic expansion of the company. We are proudly, very proudly, still based in Madison, Wisconsin today. Our office is just a few blocks from here. So I'm very passionate about pushing entrepreneurship forward here in the city of Madison and Wisconsin in general. So I do help out as well with Generator, who is an accelerator here in Wisconsin and a few other areas across the country. We are, once again, very proudly their first investment. So we help them with their new investments as they continue to scale across the country, and I definitely help them as much as I possibly can. So a little bit about me and Eat Street.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're going to go into a time of a little bit of Q&A with the panelists, and then after that, we are going to do a live pitch session with two groups. We're super excited to have you guys. And then after that, we will have some time for Q&A with the audience, and then we're going to finish up and invite everybody over to the reception. So we're just going to get started with some questions here, and these are for all the panelists. Can each of you talk about how you got started and when? And you kind of already said a little bit of that, but if there's anything more that you want to expand on. Or not.
I can start with that. So, like I said, I started Eat Street while I was a junior here at the University of Wisconsin, and to be honest, when we first started this company, we would have called it a project. We didn't, if someone asked what is the name of your company, I would have said, well, it's not a company. It's something that it's a hobby is probably what I would have called it. And the reason we started the company was it's a very interesting story. One day, my co-founder, his name's Eric, he called me up and said, I have an idea to start a company. And I said, okay, tell me about it. He's like, well, I just used this service to order food online, and the delivery driver showed up at the door and handed me the sub that I ordered online and said, hey, just so you know, next time don't use the service that you did. Just call in the order over the phone. So the delivery driver was trying to convince him to not use technology, and he was a computer science, computer engineering major, so it's very against his DNA, and just to call in the restaurant over the phone. So that night, that's when he called me up and said, look, I looked at the site. I think I can build this along with my friend Alex. So my background was largely in sales. At that time, throughout high school, I sold running shoes at a local sporting goods store. And then in college, I sold cars. So he called me up. His exact words were, "You've sold shoes, you've sold cars. Can you go sign restaurants?" I said, "Sure, why not?" Like again, we didn't really think we'd build it into a company. We never thought that would be. If you told me that we were going to have 1,500 employees 7 years later, I thought you were crazy. But all it took was a delivery driver saying, "Don't use this service," and that's how we got it going. And the first Google search I did was how to start a business. Figured out how to file an LLC, and I don't know what people did before Google. And then my co-founders, the first thing they Googled was how to build a website, and it took us 8 months to launch it. A lot of work to build the product, and then I had to go sell restaurants. I signed the first 10 restaurants without a product, so that was good, I guess. And within a year, we were able to scale it to 100 restaurants throughout Madison. And we didn't. One thing that a lot of people think about when they hear Eat Streets raised $40 million that they don't realize is we actually bootstrapped it for the first 2.5 years. So we didn't raise any venture capital. The good thing is we were already poor college students, so we were already used to being poor. So starting a company was naturally made sense. So we didn't raise capital until we figured out the right way to expand it, and then we started expanding it to more markets. But that's a brief overview of how we got started.
Well, I actually also got started. My first entrepreneurial venture was actually social entrepreneurship. It was a nonprofit arts organization that my friends and I started here in Madison, and which still exists today. It's the Madison Folk Music Society. It was a concert promotion enterprise that my friends and I, when I was a graduate student here, we thought it would be fun to bring singers and artists and musicians to Madison that we wanted to hear. And we started producing concerts in the Great Hall at the Union. I was actually over there last night to hear a folk music concert. It was pretty cool. And also, had absolutely no idea how to do it. We just, printed up posters. We rented the Great Hall. We sold tickets, and the first concert we ever promoted sold out, which is why I'm not an educational psychologist, which is what I earned my degree here in. That just completely seduced me into the world of the show business, and which is where I've basically made my career. I actually intersected with food much later on in my career when I was hired as CEO of Food Network. I knew nothing about food, but that was really 20 years ago, and nobody knew anything about food. Now I just read that half the people in the United States will call themselves a foodie, which is, I just wow, that's incredible. I think getting going as a student is really, is amazing, especially on campus like Madison, where it's, there's so many different kinds of resources, there's so many different kinds of people. An engineer can partner with a marketing person from the business school, and start something up. And of course, the technology makes it, like you were saying, Matt, it makes it, it's practically no cost capital requirement to get started in any kind of tech venture of that nature. So, I was really fortunate, I think, to be here at the university, and eventually hooked up with a national arts organization also based here in Madison, which is how I actually got my first full-time corporate gig as a concert promoter at the University of Tennessee, which is when I left Madison. So that was my beginnings as an entrepreneur.
Not near as good, I don't think. I guess to finish up on how we got started, I got called by one of my former clients, a really smart biochem, and he said to me, "I think I came up with something," and I asked him what it was, and he said, "I was working on this experiment to reduce the viscosity in fruit juice," and he was trying to make a super shot, and it was blackberries. And he said at the end of the day of making, I think, 500 experiments, he had failed over and over. He had come up with which was an interesting solution. So I said, "Well, what are you calling me for?" And he said, some money. So that's how Luke Hobson and I came together on this last endeavor. A friend of mine for 25 years, and he is really smart and quite a good lab and a researcher. And what my background is coming from the farm. I'm from Northwest Iowa. My parents farmed an awful lot of acres, but I'm in front of you guys because I wasn't a very good farmer. I couldn't sit in the tractor for, my mother said it was my ADD before ADD was actually pronounced, I guess. But as I migrated through the system of agriculture in Iowa State, I have some other companies that I've been a part of that I guess brought me to this stage. And it's maybe the pursuit of maybe what can't be done, and maybe to second what Matt had said at the beginning, we didn't really think of it as a company at the beginning. We actually were just trying to solve, as we've done hundreds of times before, something that was a problem. And that happened to be that we believe in agriculture, that fruit juice, you should drink it, even if it is high in sugar. It's still very nutritionally dense. But we saw that there was a big migration away from fruit juice and something of the farm, the orchards, maybe not in Northwest Iowa, but in Michigan, that people were moving away from fruit juice. And I joke about this all the time, that young people will spend $4.67 to buy their Starbucks latte, their vanilla latte at the end of the day or at the beginning of the morning, and that has 24 grams of sugar, but they'll remove their 24 grams of orange juice or grape juice or a blueberry juice. So just that passion, I guess, of moving it from a research, or this isn't really a company, to evolving. We started this in 2013. If anyone ever challenges us about how long it's taken, I would say they've never tried to take sugar out of fruit juice. It's pretty difficult. So just a little bit about us.
So we have a lot of young, aspiring entrepreneurs in the room. Can we talk about how many hats you have to wear to get a business off the ground? And maybe what's the best advice you can offer to someone who is just getting started?
I can start with that, I guess. For most of us, it's not so much the hats that we wear. It's the conversion of the hats that we wear to get the job done. As I joked, putting this few questions together, it was actually kind of sometimes comical when I was talking to Luke about what do we do, and we used Google. That was one of my answers on another one of what do you do. You just Google it, and they'll have a lot of suggestions. But in the movement of the hats, one of the things that you learn when you own a company is the movement of just wearing that hat. Whether I joke with my staff all the time that I clean the bathroom really, really well, and those tasks that you have to do to keep your business going are always important. But really, the anxiety that I get as an owner is the shift from moving from those hats to the delegation and hiring someone to come on board. And that's where I would say is be thoughtful in your process, that make sure you really have a great business, because when you go from the multiple hats to hiring someone, that's your responsibility to pay them, that they might have moved, they might have dropped another job to take your position. Those are the things that honestly I wrote in, or maybe interpreted the question just a bit different on that.
I guess my answer on that one, in the early days at least, is I wore every hat except technology. So my co-founders were the tech end of the business. They built the product from scratch, and essentially I was in charge of everything else. So sales, customer support, marketing, and I think looking back, that was the best thing I ever did, because I learned every aspect of my company. So don't get me wrong, I'm not an expert in really any of those areas, but I know enough to be dangerous. And now today, back to what you said earlier is like now that I'm hiring people to wear those hats, it allows me to be a better CEO, to be able to relate to them, to understand what their issues are, and know the challenges that they're trying to overcome. Because for the first few years, I answered every customer service phone call, so I know what issues restaurants have, what issues our diners have, and I think that's very valuable. Even though it's been 5 years since I've answered a customer service phone call, I know the types of questions they get, and I know the types of problems that they have. So I think my answer is you do have to wear a lot of them, but I do think, to me, that's the easier part. The harder part is finding people to take those hats away from you and start becoming the expert and letting go. That's one thing as entrepreneurs it's really hard to do, because you have a certain way of doing it, and when you hire a new executive to come in and help you, your job is to step back and let them run. And ultimately that's going to make you better as well. It's going to make the company more successful. So it's, for right now today, as I've scaled the company, now people ask me, what is your day to day? And I say, I just help out with whatever department's on fire. Whatever department that day needs my help, that's where I'm going to be. And that's why, like I said, I'm very glad that I worked in every aspect of the company, because I can definitely help. Sometimes I come up with dumb ideas, but I like to think every once in a while I can help them through their problems when those issues come up.
So when I stepped in as CEO at Food Network, I was not the CEO who launched the network. As I often say, I was the one that the board hired to save it from the CEO who launched the network, who, for a variety of reasons, was a great startup guy but could not manage an organization. And so 2.5 years into the startup phase of the Food Network, I came in to try to see if we could save it, because it was in very, very bad shape in every way, not just financially, but also it's a problem when you have a television network and nobody's watching the television network. That's a problem. You need to put on shows that people want to watch. So it was a very difficult turnaround, or attempt at a turnaround. Fortunately we were successful at that attempt, but it didn't seem like anybody was going to be able to be successful. There were many structural problems with the network financially. We only had one revenue stream. There are no cable television networks with only one revenue stream, typically from advertisers and from affiliates. And Food Network was launched with no affiliate fees. It was free to affiliates. That was a very flawed decision, but that was what was going on. So as CEO, when I stepped into this job, there were actually about 170 to 100 full-time employees and about another equal number of part-time employees. However, because it was still a startup, it required the CEO to basically, manage many moving parts, from finance to HR to operations to programming to marketing, all across the board. And my feeling was that the CEO in that situation had a couple of really key hats. One is the chief salesperson to all the constituencies, to the advertisers, to the affiliates, to the board, to the viewers, and everybody in between. And then also the chief people officer, everybody who was hired at the network. I was the last interview, for anybody hired at the network, from a receptionist to SVP. I think there were a couple other things, but I think those are two of the key things that the CEO does that nobody else can really fulfill that role in that way. And then of course, the CEO does need to be the chief business development officer too. They need to be on top of, especially in the startup phase, they need to know what is driving the key important sales. There's just no way you can outsource that either to people on your team or to consultants. You have to know yourself why people want to buy the network, or in this case, why they wanted to buy into the network and why they wanted to watch the network, and there were a whole bunch of different consumer segments there. I feel that's really super important.
Add anything you want to add? Okay. So fundraising is obviously a huge part of building a brand and a business. Can we talk about fundraising and any advice that you all may give?
Hard. It's really hard. So at Eat Street, I think in the early days, you read an article and we've raised over $40 million, and that sounds great, but the amount of gray hairs I added in the process of trying to raise that capital, especially in the early days. So I think when it comes to raising an investment, I think the first piece of advice I really make sure to tell entrepreneurs is you really have to know your business inside and out, and that's once again back to the knowing all aspects of my business and how we were running it was very helpful. And I think your ultimate goal when you're doing a pitch, in my mind, is to show that here's the path, here's the plan that I have, and this is why it's not risky. But it's inherently very risky, and your job is to show why it's not. And they may not, as you go through that pitch, and that's really how I've laid out my deck is, here's what we're trying to accomplish, and here's how we're going to get there, and here's data to support why it's not risky, or here's what we've done already to make it not risky. But inherently, like I said, it's like there's a lot of research that says 1 in 10 startups make it. So it is a very risky thing, but your job to tell the investors, here's how I'm going to make it work. And throughout the pitch, to give specific examples, for Eat Street, we were very much taking the model that we had built in Madison and then scaling it to more markets. So I use Madison as my example. I showed this is what we did in Madison, and here's how we're going to expand it to Milwaukee, to Oshkosh, to Eau Claire, to La Crosse, and showing how we were going to do that based on the Madison playbook. Now, the reality is every city is very different. So it's going to change throughout the years. We started Eat Street when we did not do delivery. Now, today, we deliver a lot of orders every single day. We have 1,500 delivery drivers spread across the country. That was not part of the plan. And investors know that plan is going to change, but it's all about your conviction of how you're going to make it successful. So, and then one other piece of advice, for Eat Street, it was really hard because, the hardest investment we ever closed was a $2.5 million investment. The easiest investment I ever closed was $25 million. And the reason for that is that $2.5 million investment was our first big significant investment. I was a first-time entrepreneur. I didn't have the story down as much, and I didn't have as much data to support it. And, looking back, I was ready I did have a term sheet to close an investment if I moved out to California. So I had to relocate the company. Now, at that time, we were only 10 people, so it was a lot easier to do that. It would be near impossible to do that today. But I think in my mind, I was like, yeah, I knew I wanted to be here, so I knew I wanted to scale the company here in Wisconsin, and I was ready to give up a little too early. And another piece of advice I give to entrepreneurs is if you really figure out your strategy and your plan and have conviction behind it, just stay dedicated to it, and you might, I was able to find the investor here in the Midwest. It came down to the line. I think we were about 7 days from going out of business, so it worked out. But it's not an easy process. You got to stay dedicated to it. You have to stay passionate about it. Who would have thought? It's really hard to get told no 40 times, and that's how many times I got told no in that pitch of investment. 40 people told me no, but it only took one to say yes to get that investment complete. So it's a very tough process. You really just have to know your business in and out, and you really have to have a lot of passion behind it. And ultimately, it's not an easy thing to do, but it is possible, and I'm very confident. My goal at Eat Street is to help make Madison known for venture capital so people don't have the problems that I had when I closed my first round of financing, because it would have been a huge mistake to relocate the company. To be honest, I don't think we would have been successful if we did.
I think $40 million is a lot of money, so I think for all of you guys to second what Matt said, it is extremely hard, and there's a lot of rejection. So while we have this meet and greet, I would definitely talk to this guy because he's shown a path to be successful. It's not easy. The things I would say is to be extremely honest, have a very good plan, maybe even have the game plan B and C a little bit in your pocket as you get challenged. I guess fortunate or not fortunate, my wife and maybe I said probably 2 years ago while we're waiting for our patents. So we waited for the U.S. patent for 6 years, by the way, or almost 6 years. We defended it 6 times, which is just a lot of money. That we were spending our retirement for our retirement. understand failure a bit easier than someone with a checkbook, by the way. So when you go into this, make sure that you understand that, as my father used to say, you really don't own anything until it's paid for. Remember that. I cannot really put that much of a sense into how much money one should raise. I guess coming from the farm and always being on a cash flow basis, we didn't buy things until we had money. I'm not so sure that the business I'm in right now is under that same process, because the dollars that we had to prepay for patents, and maybe we're in a kind of give a basis of this. So you said 1 in 10. In the beverage business, there's 4,000 new beverages produced every year. So I was like, that seems like a lot. So I said, how many are successful? And they said, 12.
Wow.
And I said, how successful are 12 beverages? That was what was shocking, what success on one person means versus maybe what I was expecting success to be. 12 meant that sometime in their life, and I note sometime in their life, they might make $5 million, or they would get to $5 million in sales. And that's the harsh reality, that flash, that goose, all that stuff. There's 12, and it's only $5 million. And we've already spent a couple million just to build a facility, and there's only 12. So I think, again, just be appreciative of the people with the money, and also be somewhat firm too. Make sure that you have your abilities to articulate your thoughts, but also make sure, I tell my wife sometimes it's like a house that you purchased, that the basement wasn't finished, so that the buyer really can see some easy appreciation of their money, and maybe that works as well. Again, I've only raised a little bit of money, and most of it's come off of my checkbook. But my wife is the fiercest investor, because I have to see her 365 days of the year. I shouldn't say that, because I traveled 222 days last year. So that's the other thing about the commitment to do these things, relocating or movement. You have to move around a lot to see these people. And I remember the first time that I was asked by the Michigan Economic Development people. So they gave us a grant. We got $250,000 to look at the feasibility of building a facility in Michigan. And I remember there was some strings to that. I didn't realize it at the time, but it's politics. So they asked me if I would reach out to the Traverse City or the Northern Angels. People, I met with them 4 times, and I have to drive 6.5 hours from Green Bay, Wisconsin to Traverse City, and 4 times to find out that their term sheet was like a VC term sheet, that I was thinking I was asking for $20 million. They wanted to give me $100,000 for my business that we were ready to pitch at $10 million. And all I could remember is I spent 35 hours with these people based on driving to say, no, I'm all right. I don't really need your money. So be cognizant of that as well.
I haven't had experience in actually fundraising for the businesses that I've personally been involved with, but I advise. I sit as an advisor on the board of a couple of different companies in food tech and also in education tech. I tend to favor working with female founders. It is absolutely true that female founders have a much more difficult time raising money. Absolutely. Primarily because there aren't that many female VCs. And other reasons too, but it's if you look at the data, it's not a subjective fact; it's an objective, right? It's an objective fact, and this is true for female entrepreneurs around the globe, not just in the United States. Actually, I saw data just today that if you're this, you might like this, Matt, and you too, Chad. If you get to 3 years, if your startup makes it to 3 years, you're quite likely to succeed. It's not necessary. I guess it's the 1 in 10 perhaps overall, but the first 3 years are really the critical piece.
That'll make me sleep better tonight.
I think that, but I think the other thing is that, and especially I think for female entrepreneurs, I think this is actually quite true, that they don't necessarily get involved with businesses that they intend to scale. And they don't necessarily think about raising capital, which isn't, which we could think of as, perhaps a failure of imagination, or a failure of will, or a failure of guts, or whatever. But a lot of female businesses don't scale. They're smaller. That doesn't mean that they can't be a good living. It doesn't mean that they're a hobby. They're somewhere between being just a hobby and being a full scale operation that's going to sell for a lot of money. And I think that's okay. That's okay too. And a lot of entrepreneurs are perfectly happy, with something quite a bit smaller. And a lot of entrepreneurs, male and female, are also happy bootstrapping forever. And in this regard, one of my heroes is a woman named Linda Wertheim. Her company is lynda.com, Lynda. I'm not sure if the University of Wisconsin is actually. Is anybody familiar with Linda? Because a lot of universities are customers of hers, and they sign blanket licenses for the entire student body. What lynda.com does is she started out, she and her husband, mailing out DVDs teaching, or actually I think VHS tapes, teaching people how to use Excel, how to use PowerPoint, how to do basic computer functions. It graduated, I believe, to DVDs and then online. She didn't take any money into her company until very, very late in the day, when I think she raised a couple $100 million in venture capital, and shortly thereafter, within the next 12 months or so, sold to LinkedIn for over $1 billion. But for the first many years, maybe 12 years or 15 years of that company's existence, she and her husband bootstrapped it. So in Kickstarter, there are a lot of different ways to finance a company without having to go to the capital markets. So I just put that out there as, for people to be more, a little bit open-minded about how they're going to get their money together.
Thank you. Can you guys talk about and maybe share some mentorship stories? Was there anyone who was really influential in your career? Any stories that you want to share with those of us here?
I was I did not have the benefit, actually, of very much mentorship throughout my business career. I wish I had. A couple of different people along the way who were very helpful to me, and helpful especially in the corporate segment of my career. But as an entrepreneur and as a turnaround CEO, maybe this is also a factor of being female. They're really. I was only the second woman ever to run a television network in the United States, so there weren't that many mentors out there, lots and lots of very good friends, and lots of very, very helpful people, but not a lot of people to look up to, actually. In my particular case.
Matt or Chad?
Two things come to mind when you ask that. I think for me personally, I never imagined myself to be an entrepreneur. I never thought that's what I'm gonna do. But I was lucky enough to watch my father start a company. Now he's a machinist, so he makes parts for a living for tractors and other things. So we live a very different life. But what I learned from that, as having him as a mentor, was that how hard it is to start something, no matter what it is, whether it's technology or whether it's manufacturing, it's very challenging. And watching him start from zero, when he started his company, I was about 10 years old, and watching him have to go through what he had to go through to get it there. Like, when I decided that I did want to start a company, I knew that I had the right mindset going in, that it wasn't going to be easy, that it was going to be really hard to scale. And there was times where, although I knew he had very little knowledge of what I was doing, he's never used my product. He probably never will. But I do think it's valuable to have someone to speak to when you have those hard times, who've experienced similar situations. And then secondly, one thing that I'll call out is I've been fortunate enough, as I've raised venture capital, to find some very strategic investors that are not only just investors, that have been entrepreneurs before. And, don't get me wrong, investors can be helpful, but the most helpful ones are the ones that have been entrepreneurs, because they know what you're going through. And there's one investor in particular who's always been the person that I can call with, I don't know what to do here. And he scaled a company that sold to Skype for $200 million, and then he helps sell when Skype was purchased by Microsoft. He helped with that as well. So like it's really good to have a person like that. That it's like if I call him up, the chances are he knows that there's something going on, that there's an issue that he can help, and he might not have the direct knowledge of how to help me, but he has a general idea, and it's just someone good to just be able to vent to, and have a mentor like that is really, really important. So whether it's in an industry that you're in or whether it's completely different, I think entrepreneur to entrepreneur, it's really important to find someone that's been in your shoes at some point.
Yes, I didn't think about the actual mentor that often, but I came from a small town in Iowa, 350 people, and as I was reflecting about the people in my life, I found out that I had a lot of help. And maybe when you're from a small town in Iowa, everyone knows who you are. Our families, I had both my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, all the cousins. You really don't move so without anyone knowing it. But I think that's where I'd come back and say that's a foundation that it maybe makes it easier from right from wrong, maybe being between the fence posts, as my father used to say. But what I think I learned was a lot about these nonverbal cues about skills. In farming, when you look down the field and you see the straightest rows, or you see the cleanest fields, or you show up at the local cooperative and you deliver the grain, on who the best farmers are. It just is so nonverbal. So my father was a very nonverbal person. He runs a huge organization and a huge family farm, but I think as I was thinking about the mentorship, I was just getting ready. Now, as it transitioned, a little bit different than what Erica said, as it transitioned to business, I really relied on my customers, the Smithfield Foods, the Bar S's, the Boar's Heads, the people that I wanted to emulate of how they did business. And maybe at the beginning you have to probe a bit to get some questions, but maybe don't always feel like you're trying to follow someone. It's also take the time to ask questions. I actually use the comment a lot of times with my friends. I want to interview them kind of in a way to ask them maybe some almost similar questions so you can build your own way of doing business. And I think maybe it's not so scary then, I guess. But generally, we are of our parents, our grandparents. We are of the nature of our businesses, our experiences. I can't imagine how confident Erica could probably be just because she started as a CEO that was taking over for a bad situation. When you accomplish that, guess what? You have a lot of confidence to go and do your next endeavor. And sometimes I think that's what it's about, though. It's getting confidence at the very elementary levels and just building on it. Everyone has a great story, and they can be a great mentor as well. Don't, I would say, poo-poo like your understanding of who you are based on maybe the limitation of your experiences, because your experiences, just as I wouldn't have thought that taking pigs to the market after the day they were closed was going to cost me $150,000. The reason, again, I'm up here, I wouldn't have gone to college if IBP didn't shut down the market the day before when I had to deliver hogs. So these experiences, these are what make us, and don't be ashamed or even shy about speaking up and taking the time to look at. But also, try not to follow. Try to make your own path as well. So.
Well, thank you so much. That's gonna conclude our discussion time right now. And everyone in the audience will have some time at the end to ask questions, but we're gonna go into the live pitch session. The first group coming up is Par Star, but before they come up, I am gonna go over some ground rules for the pitches. So each pitching group gets up to 5 minutes. We will have a timer. Samples are allowed. Risk taking is encouraged. Take a deep breath, just relax. After the pitch, the panel will have 5 minutes to provide feedback. And then we're gonna wait until both pitches are finished before we open it up for questions with the audience. So first up is Par Star. Who's Par Star? Where are you guys? All right, you guys ready? All right, well, we're gonna have you guys come up here.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here, but with all the description of the startups that we had here and all the challenges, I'm thinking of switching from being a startup to being a start right, which means that we need a mentor like Matt, Erica, and Chad on our team to help us through all these difficulties that you've gone through. And speaking of cold weather, let's look at the bright side. We're not in northern Wisconsin, at least. And also, the days are getting longer. So hopefully, things will look brighter as we move forward. It's really great to have a very nice audience like this at the UW and be able to share our ideas with you and talk about our startup. So I am Hossein.
I'm Mohammad Reza.
And we are Par Star. We are developing a yogurt snack that is for professionals and students that don't really have that much time to sit down and have a wholesome meal. So the snack market is about $6 billion here in the United States. And yogurts, which make up a big part of that snack market, is around $9 billion. So we would love to take a share of that market, especially since we saw a lot of space that lots of those big brands like Chobani have not done anything in. So this idea came up when basically we were at many parties, and we have this Persian style yogurt that's always served, and we were thinking of that, why don't we have this on the shelf? So the problem with all those yogurts on the shelves right now is that they are fruit yogurts and they have sweeteners, they have additives. If you look at the back of it, the list is pretty long of ingredients that they use to make the yogurts. So our yogurt is a lot more simple, and it has a balance between the amount of sweetness it has with the amount of fiber and protein and vitamins that will be being mixed into it. And we call this a synergy yogurt because it has a mix of herbs, cucumbers, and low-fat yogurt. So that's why the calories that are in our yogurt is half the calories you'll see in a normal yogurt. And also, we were thinking that every time you buy a yogurt, you don't have anything to have with it. So consumers have to run around the aisles and look for something to pair up the yogurt with. And we're thinking, so we're going to pair this yogurt with a whole wheat like cracker that when a person takes this off the shelf, they're ready to go. They're ready to have that meal, to have that yogurt. So part of the idea is to have a more wholesome experience while having our yogurt, and at the same time having a balanced and more healthy option. So the fruit yogurts have 10 to 15 grams of sugar. Our yogurt has no added sugar. So in general, yogurt and milk products do have some type of sugar integrated into them, but the yogurt that we have doesn't have that added aspect of which usually the fruit yogurts have almost 15 grams of sugar. And the other part of our project is to be, in a way, saving a lot of time for the professionals, for them to have a snack that is already right there. And also when they have it, they kind of feel more full. And the last thing is that lots of these yogurts need to be spooned, but ours can be both spooned, using a spoon to have the yogurt, and also matched as a dip with the crackers that we provide them. So thanks for listening to our pitch. Hopefully we will have mentors like you on our side to help us move forward with all the challenges that we'll have. And yeah, thanks for having us.
Better than beat Bobby Flay.
There's benefits to it.
Yes, exactly.
No, you go first.
Just sorry, not every, we should have. Yeah.
So we're letting the panelists try the yogurt. And then they're gonna have 5 minutes to provide feedback.
I think the first piece of feedback that I would give is, so first of all, I definitely think you have a great, unique product. I love the taste of it. I am a person who is trying to cut back on sugars, and it's been a little sad to not have some of the yogurt I love. I could also see this being a great side with veggies, and actually one thing, especially if I'm on a very busy day and I don't have a ton of time, I could actually see this almost being as a little bit of a meal replacement. It's obviously not a big meal. It's probably not something you want to only eat, but I think that you could kind of pitch that as this could be your fast, easy, healthy way to get a meal in quickly. So I think talking up the differences that you have versus your competition a little bit more could be helpful, because I think more than just crackers, I think this could go along with other items as well.
It does. Sorry, not everybody can taste it. It is really good. Really good. Congratulations on your product and on your pitch. I really enjoyed listening to you. It is kind of interesting that there aren't savory yogurts on the market, but I'm thinking this tastes kind of like a tzatziki, like the Greek yogurt with cucumber. And I think Sabra makes something like that. I've seen a couple different brands right on the market with. I think Sabra does. However, I think it's kind of interesting to position it as a yogurt, as a savory yogurt, and I think there's a niche there. I would have to think more about the whole product formulation and packaging, and how you would actually go about doing this and introduce the market. I know that Chobani's story is quite interesting, how he got started in upstate New York, I believe, and built the company. There are a lot of issues with this kind of product formulation, with not just making the product, but the refrigeration of it, the delivery to market, and lots of complicated pieces there. Scaling it, making it into an actual. I would hope there would be people here at the university in the dairy department that was mentioned when we first started that could help you with some of these logistical. They are helping you right now. Great, that's great.
I would also just I spend the last 30 years in product development and sales of that. The product is fantastic, especially the one with the raisins.
Yeah, that's really good.
I think I wouldn't think of it as a yogurt. I think it was more as a dipping product. I think second, what Erica had made a comment about the challenges of packaging and delivery. Would this be shelf stable then, or would it it's really good. I think those are the challenges you have specifically when you're coming to the marketplace and shelf life. I can only teach you about that on the juice side. It's crazy the amount of juice that gets thrown away. I would think about the crackers. I actually think this would be packaged in a way that you'd have the like what you see with the hummus, where you have the hummus on one side with the foil, and then you have your crackers. I wouldn't go wheat. The reason, because you're going to lose a lot of audience, is because of celiac. I would go something probably a bit more wheat allowable on that side of the equation. But use the university for food safety and that development. Absolutely good. I thought your pitch was great. So thanks for coming up
I'll
here.
reiterate one thing I think that you said that was important. I do think packaging this more as a dip, in my opinion, that was kind of the first thing I thought of. Like when I said vegetables, like I just want to get some carrots and some celery up here, and I would eat the rest of this very quickly. So back to the packaging and putting it all in
Correct.
one, I think there could be some really good opportunities there, and that'll even help you with your mission of pitching it as more of a healthy product. If you're pairing it with vegetables, that it's going to help kind of get that across.
And I think, second on that as well, though, the yogurt industry is losing a little bit of its halo effect. And I just saw, one of the benefits to building a facility is I bought a lot of used equipment. So now I get on every auction site across every part of the world. And I just saw another yogurt facility closing down this last week. So maybe some space on that. I don't think the dipping market is near as is. But on the same note, how would you get that nutrition across? I think that'll be really important. Simple ingredients are really good. Just the obvious, the sugar in the milk. Is it going to be 5 grams versus 15? I think those are fantastic points that you pointed out. Nicely done.
We have 30 seconds left. I have a question. What were the 2 flavors that they had up here? Sure. Love it. Thank you. Thank you. Great job, guys. And now our second group, Trini-P. You guys ready to come up?
Just like that.
as good as we can do, I think. Uh-oh. Where'd you have the other slide up?
Hello everyone, my name is Christy Chang.
And I'm Ian Fox.
And I'm Iman Kadem, and we are Trinipea.
We are here to present to you all today a revolutionary new product that aims to be the trifecta of sustainability, veganism, and sweetness.
First, let us introduce who we are. So we are a group of food science students here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and our goal is to positively impact the world's human nutrition problems and the food industry through innovative technologies, product development, and our passion for food.
So every year, we tackled the product development course by first thinking of 3 different problems in the industry that we'd like to solve. And this year, the confectionery industry was our target. So every single day, Americans consume 2.5 times the daily recommended value of sugar. 40% of the world's harvested food is wasted. And every single day, I think about all the different dessert options that are on the market, but there aren't that many gluten-free and vegan options in the market. And so for these problems, the solution became Trinipea.
Knowing what the solution was, we wanted to develop a product that added value to waste streams in the food industry. So we used aquafaba, the waste stream in chickpea manufacturing. Aquafaba is rich in vegan proteins, and it can be whipped into a meringue as opposed to using egg whites. So that is what we did to develop the first commercially available vegan meringue option. Additionally, the demand for chickpeas domestically has increased 325% in recent years. And so this not only adds value to chickpeas themselves, but also the waste streams and waste reduction strategies at a production facility. So we have created value in a waste stream that otherwise would go down the drain.
So our target market is millennials and young adults. They are currently the largest generation in the U.S. labor force, with 1 in 3 American labor workforce participants being millennials. With this in mind, we see that millennials are very busy individuals and are more likely to purchase snack foods to sustain this lifestyle. They are also very health conscious, with wellness being an active daily pursuit for millennials. Furthermore, they care a lot about the environment, with 73% of millennials being willing to pay extra money for sustainable goods. Knowing all of this, we incorporated 3 trends we believe millennials care most about and follow into Trinipea. They are veganism, zero waste, and reduced sugar. The prevalence of veganism has increased 600% between 2014 and 2017, and we can only expect this number to continue to increase in the future. The zero waste movement has also taken society by storm, with more and more millennials choosing to live a zero waste lifestyle. If you scroll through the explore pages of Instagram, you'll see countless influencers trying to promote a more sustainable lifestyle, something which was unheard of just a couple of years ago. And finally, more and more consumers are trying to avoid added sugars and are overall just trying to reduce their sugar intake. Furthermore, millennials are also trying to avoid artificial sweeteners, and more of them are turning to natural sweeteners such as stevia, which we have incorporated into our product.
So some cool things about our product is that it's 12 months shelf stable at room temperature, which allows us to keep our texture and flavor on the market longer than a lot of other types of meringues. It's also low calories, so we formulated it to be under 100 calories with the inclusion of dark chocolate, and some of the meringues are enrobed, which we'll kind of go into, but it's also packaged in a way that allows us to give a product that a user could use on the go. There's your package. So it's a resealable, recyclable packaging that you can throw it in your bag on the going to the gym, wherever you're going, you can share it with your friends. That's the kind of concept we really wanted it to be. So the meringues, there's 3 different varieties. There's a decadent dark chocolate enrobed meringue that highlights an impeccable combination between a fluffy aerated center and the dark chocolate, which is, bitter. There's a cacao nib mix-in that allows you to get like a nice crunch, and then there's also a delightful vanilla, just original stamped meringue.
So to recap, we've discovered a new ingredient technology that can be used in a multitude of different applications. As we've shown today, one application is to create a meringue that will satisfy the snack food desires of millennial consumers. So we now invite panelists to try our product. Thank you.
Okay, I just tried one and that's delicious.
The first thing that came to mind, first of all, thanks for the samples. I was worried that we weren't going to get some. They looked great. But I think what I would encourage you to do in the pitch, because the meringue is great, is talk about other examples that it could be. I know you probably don't have all the ways that you're going to utilize it, but just a few examples of this is directions that we could go to start think. It's important for you to show in your pitch that you're already thinking of what the next products could potentially be. It's not, one thing I always tell entrepreneurs is you don't have a crystal ball. You're not going to be able to predict the future, but you need to do your best to try to convince them like this could happen, this could be the plan. So I would encourage you to think through what could be the next things. But these things are delicious.
What are you thinking the price point is?
I think we've established it. We have a big team, so this is just 3 of us out of all 10 of us, but I think I want to say it's around like $3 for a package. $3.50. Okay.
$3.50 for a package.
Yes. So it
how
has.
Many, or how many ounces?
So it's gonna be 220 grams. Each, I think the serving size would be 6 different meringues, 2 of each. That's how we calculated the nutrition, serving size. And again, it's under 100 calories, so we plan on using like a pretty bittersweet chocolate to reduce, added sugar amount. But
yeah, I asked you that question because I'm curious about the actual production of these meringues and how expensive it is to actually put together a facility to produce them. So then the second question of that is, you're going to chickpea manufacturers, people that are already manufacturing chickpeas, and there's some sort of waste product from the production of chickpeas?
So from the production side, we modeled our production after a marshmallow because this is a similar aerated product. So that's how we developed our statistical process control and other quality attributes of the production. And I think Iman can take the chickpea side.
yeah, so we contacted a bunch of like chickpea manufacturers, like Sabra Hummus, Athanos Hummus. I contacted a bunch of other people, like I don't know, Seed or something. But in the chickpea manufacturing process, whether they're canned or if chickpeas are going to be used for hummus, for example, what they first do is they either like blanch or they like do a cooking step with the chickpeas in a large tank of water. And so all the soluble polysaccharides, like proteins, anything that can go into solution will go into that water, and that water is traditionally just sent to a municipal or some type of like wastewater treatment facility. I think one of the big things for us was we went to a wastewater treatment facility in Wisconsin. They told us as as food science students, we want you guys to be able to think, how can you reduce the amount of wastewater that comes to us? And so that's kind of like where the idea came in, where we were going to do like waste and try to take something to repurpose. And we've done this in the past too with other products. So
So, sorry, to follow up question, will those chickpea manufacturers pay you to take this waste off their hands?
So that's a really difficult question to answer. If you think of like the brewing industry, currently like spent grain is being repurposed into new ingredients. We did that last year. Our thought process was that they're giving it to animal feed industry for low cost or even for free in some situations. Originally, before cheese or whey became a huge functional ingredient in the dairy industry, it was given away to farmers as feed for free. So as these ingredients become more functional and we learn about the science, I'm assuming it would no longer be free. But for us, it would be a way for us to reduce their waste stream, and we would probably partner with some type of big. That's the goal, right? Partnering with a big company that makes chickpeas.
Yeah, actually, the reason I asked that is I work with a company that also works with spent grain from bakeries in This company is based in Brooklyn, and they take the spent grain, they dry it, they grind it, turn it into a flour, which they sell to bakeries. But they found that the breweries had to pay somebody to haul the mash away. So they were so that was actually a second revenue stream.
Right. Yeah. Last year we did the exact same thing. We made a chip out of the flour, and our thought process was that we would invest into getting like a dewatering screw press so that you can reduce the amount of weight that the beer grain has, and then be able to transport that wherever it needs to go. But keeping the supply chain local at first, and then building up that way could also reduce costs.
I do think one thing I would encourage you to do is, I'm assuming the company could help. That could be a pitch that the company uses. I mean, as we continue to go on and people start focusing more on the environment, like they would probably love to say that we have less waste than our competition. So like using that in your pitch to convince them to give it to you for free, like that's the benefit for them. And I'm sure they would love to stamp on their their packaging that they have less waste. It's something that you should probably really hit home.
I think.
Sorry, that's actually 5 minutes, but are we okay to continue? Okay.
I think one of the things I would really get shored up would be the actual relationship between you and the actual supply side. I would see them actually taking your idea fairly quickly and just capitalizing on it. The product was fantastic. I think finding a partner right out of the gate was really important. Did you guys go through a patenting process on making the fluff or the meringue?
Actually for a IFTSA competition, so we don't really have any plans.
No problem. No, it's really for you guys that didn't get to try it, they're really, really good. And I think taking a page off of like Halo Top and those guys, that you deserve the whole pint. If you're gonna deliver 220 grams, that's a lot of product. It sounds pretty nutritional too at the statement that you made. So I would definitely hammer on the nutritional sides of indulgence all day long.
Yeah.
Right. Nicely done.
Yes.
Yeah. Good job, guys. So now we're going into the audience Q&A portion of the evening. So we're going to open it up for anyone out here who wants to ask questions to the panelists. I believe you can also ask questions to Parstar or Trini. So if anyone has a question, just raise your hand. Do we have a mic that we're... Okay. Here's a question right here. Here's a question right here, over here. Oh,
Hi.
The gentleman. Oh.
I'll get him in a second.
Oh, okay.
Hi, my question's
Oh, sorry.
for Matt and Erica. Erica, you mentioned that a lot of women don't think about scaling immediately. And for Matt, when you started thinking about Eat Street, did you think of it as a national company, or did you start and say, well, I'm just going to start with Madison and see how it goes? Or was this a pilot location for you? Because I think part of that is that sort of overwhelming thought of a national versus how do you think about scaling immediately?
I can start off with that. So first, I definitely never thought this would be a company across the country. I mean, we never, and I think, although it's important in your pitch to understand where you can go, I in the early days, I wanted to make sure we did it right in Madison first. I sometimes I see entrepreneurs moving too fast and thinking about the next markets. I don't even know if I thought about the next market for the first year and a half of the company. Like, we just wanted to get Madison right. And, I think at the time, I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but looking back, I'm glad we took it slow. We figured out the formula to make it successful here, which definitely helped us in our second and third markets as we went to launch it. But no, I never imagined it would turn into what it is today. And I think, you just, as a first-time entrepreneur, you just got to kind of take every day, one day at a time, because it was definitely challenging in the beginning, and we definitely never thought it would, we never thought it would even expand from Madison. But once we figured out we had something and we knew we wanted to at least test it out and say, okay, let's go to a second and third market. After I graduated, I felt like it could happen, it could be successful, so we decided to take it to our second and third. And once we had the results, that's when, we're like, okay, we can make this into a bigger company. I don't even know if then we thought it could be nationwide, but we knew it could at least be regional at that point. So we kind of took it one step at a time.
And there you have the classic example of a successful entrepreneur who's become successful because they didn't try to scale before they'd achieved product market fit. And that's a classic entrepreneurial mistake, is rushing to that stage before you actually know if you are solving a problem for a customer. You need to know who the customers are. You need to know what pains they have, what gains you can provide, and how your product, the value proposition of your product, matches that. And then of course you have to know that you can solve that problem and make money solving that problem. That you can either manufacture or provide a service or solution by which you make more money than you spend. Those are all very important problems to solve before you start to think about scaling. You can't scale until you've solved them.
I think one of the very important areas of starting a business or doing a turnaround, because from my experience it's very similar, is managing relationships with family, marriage, etc. And I'm wondering if you could comment on your experiences in this area. And as I say, I think that doing a turnaround is very, very similar to starting a new business in this respect.
I could probably add to a little bit of that. I've been traveling for 30 years with my other company, and I'm gone. This last year I was gone 222 days out of the year, 37 different weekend days or weekends. My wife keeps a very good count of every one of them. I guess I'll say the luxury in this particular case. My wife and I have been married 26 years. So she's been along for almost every single one of those years. But it is difficult. If you think that commitment we talked about is being 24/7, it doesn't end up always very good, 1 out of 10, or I joked about the 4,000, that it's not just the time that you're actually gone, it's also the time you're there. So I would tell you that your head will be spinning. You'll have to get comfortable when you're uncomfortable. And the best part about that there is, I guess, is that when you are there, make sure you're present. I think my wife would remind me every once in a while when I have my phone in my hand and my computer in front of me that, hey, today I'm home, so make the best of it. So I think, and you got to be wise. Try to scale as many visits as you possibly can in the same areas, those stuff like that. But it's a common problem that you become fatigued and burned out, and then what happens is so much is that you're uncomfortable with so many of the things you're doing. You don't sleep well, and it can get somewhat out of control. And I can just say, be true to yourself, though, too, is to make sure that you take the time for yourself as well, those quiet times. I find myself going to libraries, actually, because libraries are quiet, so it's all right.
I think, so this is something I've had, it's been interesting to learn over time. I mean, I've only been married for 6 years, but we have 2 small kids at home, and being able to take the time. I think one thing that I was working long hours meant that you were going to increase your chances of being successful. I don't think that's really the case. Not all work is created equal. I do think you have to work smart, and you got to find ways that you can do the work-life balance. I think one thing for me is I've learned I gotta take a day where I don't open my computer or I don't respond to emails unless something's on fire. And I think it's important to have that, know that I can spend a day with my family, and unless something is catastrophically happening, like my team's got it, we've got it figured out. I think it's really important to make that, to set that up, because if you don't, like I said, just because you work a lot of hours doesn't mean you're going to increase your chances of being successful. Because if you're so tired that you can barely keep your eyes open, you can't think straight, that's not going to, it's not going to increase your likelihood of being successful. So I think finding your time is important. And, I think one thing that's helped me is understanding where work can fit in a normal day. So like, my family goes to bed at 8:30 and I stay up and work a few more hours, and that's my time that's my quiet time. I agree with quiet time. That's my time to really crank out a lot of work, and allow me to, because it's not a 9-to-5 job. It never will be, but I think it's important to find the time that works best for you and find the time that can allow you to unwind, because everyone needs that.
Any more questions? I have a few here, and then one gentleman over here. Thank you.
Thanks to the panelists and Alice. Ryan Wagner with a company called Driftless Provisions. So we're about to launch a Kickstarter, and essentially we've been building a brand around a product that I make. It's a dry-cured sausage product, and I'm not reinventing the wheel with like a dry-cured sausage product. So we've been trying to build this brand and use social media, and maybe this is an Alice question, if anybody. What sorts of things do you believe hold true on social media to kind of stand your company out or your product out from others, whether it be blogging or Instagram or Facebook, and even the Kickstarter in some respect is hopefully going to bump us on the social media and awareness. But I guess any hints or tips from you all on that?
Well, I'll speak to social media from a food blogging standpoint, and just in general. I think you have to be dedicated to it. I think having a look and feel for your brand that's already established, that is consistent across all social media platforms, and to have a common theme and like one voice when you're posting. I think you have to post on a regular basis. And I think specifically for Instagram, your audience or consumers need to know exactly what your product is, what you're selling, what they're going to get. Like, they want to know when they go to your page, they want to know, what am I going to get if I start following this account? And then I think just have a clear URL or place where they can go to learn more information, to buy your product. But in my opinion, I think the one voice, one look and feel that's consistent across all platforms, and posting on a regular basis, and posting. This is kind of like my food blogging side, but posting photos that are appealing. And this is specifically for Instagram. If you think about Instagram, people are, you're swiping. You only stop if something catches your eye. So whether it's a photo or a video, you want it to look good. So you want your product to look appetizing and good. And so there are so many companies out there that I think could do such a better job with the creative that they put out there, because they're just posting photos of just like random things, and the lighting's horrible, and the product doesn't look good, and it's just, I think it can be improved upon a lot.
I'll definitely add to that as well. There's so much activity out there that it's sometimes people say you got to be authentic, but what we find a lot of times, if you want to get a brand, you got to get other people to talk about it and try to find ways that people will talk about you. In fact, these algorithms that are taking place, this is a business out there for much of these. You have to pay content. I mean, I know it because we live it. But try to find. I can't second the thought about making your pictures look good. That's first of all, or making sure that the people get good. If 50% of us are foodies, there should be some really great pictures of dry sausages. That's for sure. So just try to find original content and maybe that aha moment that people get, but also ask for help too, or ask for people for trade and commerce. We found that some of the best things from the desugared fruit juice point of view is we're focusing on healthy people, trying to make sure that healthy poses are actually healthy looking and not maybe a little bit too far to the left of being based on health, and sex seem to go kind of close at times. I don't know if you have to worry about that with the dry sausage, but
we're gonna go
maybe
the opposite.
maybe you do. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Big butchers. Thank you.
We have time for 2 more questions.
Matt, you had indicated that when you were starting out, you got 40 no's before a yes for funding. Where did you look? Who did you ask? And in retrospect, do you have any bright ideas that would allow you to say these 20 probably aren't worth it, and you'd have 20 no's and 1 yes?
Oh, great question. I think, first of all, one thing that I've learned is, and I'll use a specific example for this, is I don't think an hour of my time to do a pitch to someone is a waste of my time. In general, like as an example, I went into a pitch where I had learned that the group had very little interest in investing in me, but they kind of felt like it was their duty to let me come in and present. Well, they didn't know that I knew this, but I still said, I'll have time to practice my pitch. I can get some feedback from it. I can learn from that experience. Well, I went in, and lo and behold, they had no interest in investing in me. But there was one individual in the room, because it was a room of about 12 people. There was one individual in the room who disagreed with the group. And he called me up and said, look, they didn't like the pitch, they didn't like what you were doing, but I did, and I have another group that I'm a part of in Chicago. That is how I found that $2.5 million investment that I said was so hard to find. And he's a mentor of mine, and what I've learned is you can make any experience a learning experience, and in getting told no, if they just say no, it's not that valuable. Yeah, I guess you get good at rejection, but usually they give you a reason why it's no. So that can be very valuable. Another thing if I could go back in time, one thing as a young entrepreneur that I didn't fully understand was every time I did a pitch and they gave me feedback, I would change my deck and I would take that feedback. And that was actually not correct. At the end of the day, it's not going to appeal to everyone. Not everyone is going, you're trying to, by constantly changing your pitch over and over and over, it actually makes it a lot harder to sell your vision and a lot more of what the company you're trying to build yourself. And as an example, one investor told me the first slide should be about when I'm going to exit and how much money I'm going to make investors. And that was the stupidest thing I could have done. And I took that advice. And my next pitch, it went awful. And because I hadn't even sold them on what I was doing before I was telling them how much money I was going to make them. So I think you got to make your pitch your own and really understand your business and understand that you're going to get told no a lot and use those as learning experiences. When it comes to who I spoke with, anyone and anyone that would listen. It was angel groups, it was angel investors specifically, it was VCs, it was in Wisconsin, Chicago, San Francisco, New York. It was kind of all over the place. I had a lot of plane rides that day too, or that year as well, raising that $2.5 million.
Great question. Last question.
I just have a question for Matt. I'm curious about Eat Street. What separates you from other food delivery?
Everyone else.
Yeah, how did you go about stepping aside and saying, this is why you should invest in us and not them? Or
Yeah, I think we've been very core to our mission that we want to grow out what we call the tier 2 and tier 3 markets of the country. So we started in Madison, Wisconsin. That is a perfect size market for us to establish our business in. We are not going after New York, Chicago, and LA. We are going after Madison, Milwaukee, Oshkosh, Eau Claire, La Crosse, Dubuque, Iowa launches tomorrow. If you have any friends there, tell them to order Eat Street tomorrow. So we know what we're good at. We know that we can launch a market in these smaller cities successfully, and what comes with that is the best restaurant list. We want to have the most restaurants, the best restaurant content, because at the end of the day, that's why you use Eat Street. If you don't have the right restaurants to order from, there's no point of using our service. On top of that, it's having accurate ETAs and tracking and making sure that we follow through with the best delivery experience. So we feel very fundamentally that if we focus on cities, especially these smaller cities, that we can beat out any competitor that's trying to be everything to everyone. We have some competitors that have launched 500 cities in the last 6 months. I don't think that is possible to do well, in my opinion. I think this industry is very hard. It's hyper local. Just because you have a presence in Madison doesn't mean you're going to own Janesville, Wisconsin, or Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So you have to go one by one. And ultimately, the one that's going to win is the best restaurants that offers the best experience to the consumer, and that's what we feel very passionately about.
Well, thank you, everyone. I just wanted to obviously thank the panelists here. Thank you to the two groups that came up for the live pitch session. We are finished, and if you guys want to stay for the reception, it's going to happen right now, and it's just right behind us in the open atrium area. But thank you so much for coming, you guys.